It's finally here. Welcome to the Miracle Zone. More than a podcast, this is a sacred space for visionary leaders and heart-centered entrepreneurs who are ready to take off the masks, set aside the roles, and step into the raw, magical truth of what it actually means to lead in these transformational times. More than just building a business and a brand, you know that you're also here to share your medicine, lead a movement, and leave a legacy. If you've been craving next level conversations to get you to your next level, conversations that blend bold leadership, intuitive wisdom, and a touch of the miraculous, then you're in the right place. Because around here, we don't do things in a linear way. Whether you're already running a thriving business, leading a dream team, and impacting millions, or you're still on your way there, here we'll break free from the old ways of doing things and step into a multidimensional way of creating and leadership. Because in the Miracle Zone, we explore the intersection of business, leadership, and frequency. It's where strategy meets soul, and where visionary ideas become reality. And they happen in a snap. I'm Katarina, your host, guide, and bridge between the practical and the mystical in life and business. I'll share insights, channeled guidance, and heart-opening stories from pioneering leaders like you who are living at the edge and reshaping the way that we lead in this new world. So if you're ready to tap into your miracle frequency, to embrace the heart-led leadership that changes everything, then join me. Because this, my love, this is the Miracle Zone. I ask, I see, I know, I trust, I be. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Miracle Zone podcast. And I am so excited to be here with Nadia on this very hot and sweaty day. And also a really special week because this week is Mary Magdalene's feast day. And so I was really excited to have Nadia on here to join us for this beautiful exploration of leadership and embodiment and the Magdalene mysteries. And who even knows where we're going to go with this? Nadia, I don't know. Do you? Who knows? That's the mystery. We've already talked about strippers. We've already talked about the heart. We can go anywhere. So for those of you who don't know Nadia yet, she is an embodiment and intimacy coach. And I'm going to hand it over to you, Nadia, to just give us a little bit more of the juice of what you're up to these days and how you serve before we dive in.
Yeah, I love this because every time a different thing will come out, right? I've been essentially doing this work of facilitating specifically women, dropping them deeper into their bodies for about 14 years now. So embodiment facilitation of some sort, really with a focus on archetypal and erotic expression. And this has shown up for me both in teaching group classes and workshops, but also, of course, I've had a one-on-one coaching practice for about 10, 11 years now. And so between those two, doing live events and also doing work with people in a very intimate setting, I tend to work with very similar tools and themes around disconnection from the body, disconnection from the heart, disconnection from our eros, and how the reconnection to all of these pieces and essentially finding our unique way of doing it is really such a beautiful key into not only upgrading our own lives and our own personal experience of our pleasure and power and presence, but it's also very planetary. So to me, the reason I do this is, okay, yeah, sure, I love to see a woman feeling way more electrified and alive and excited and in her power, but I also find that when all of us get to connect deeper with our own bodies, which are part of the collective body, it becomes a planetary awakening. It becomes a planetary revolution. And so that's really the fire that I guess burns in my belly and my heart and keeps me going on a bigger scale. I love that. It gets me like, I get so turned on when you say that. I get turned on by it.
Right?
Yeah.
What else do we want to be on fire for besides this planetary revolution? I think there are very few people, hopefully, that are awake and aware in this time that aren't seeing the crumbling that's happening in this moment, which is not a surprise. We want it. We need the restructuring. But then how do we actually be with it in our lives and in our bodies? I think that's one of the number one questions. And also, all what I'm always talking about is how do we keep our heart open no matter what? That's like the mantra, to stay open no matter what. And I think this is part of the answer. It's the key.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, you got to go to the embodiment and energetic gym, essentially. You have to do the reps where we have to learn how to hold more and more intensity in our bodies. So whether I'm working one-on-one with just someone, private coaching client, or if I'm training someone in my facilitator training, and specifically for anyone who I'm training as a facilitator, I'm like, your personal practice is what's going to take you farther in facilitating other people's transformation, which seems obvious, right? But we really have to understand, if we don't embrace our own messy, if we don't go into all of the full range of our expression, if there are still parts of us we don't accept, or there's a notch of volume level of intensity that we can't be with without closing, which is a very natural response. Like, it's okay to feel like, numb out or close your heart in the face of something that feels threatening. But the more you go and do the reps, so to speak, and I know that sounds like really masculine when we're in such a feminine conversation, but it's discipline, it's masculine, and it's important for us to be cultivating those capacities in order for us to, this is the moment right now in the world with all the chaos. The last 5 years have really challenged us. We're going, oh my God, every year there's something new. And this is happening now. Now we've got this. Now we've got that. And there's gut-wrenching heartbreak that we have to experience in the face of witnessing so much chaos and tragedy. And yet, this is what we are training for, because the truth is, I don't know if it's going to get better next year, guys. Like, it can get better inside of you, but there's going to be a long period of, like you said, there's this crumbling and this deteriorating of the systems. And thank God, because that's the only way. This is so much about, like, the Magdalene path is that. It's about, okay, how do I let it all fall away? And how do I keep my heart open in the process of this in order to rebuild? And so we want to be sticking around for the rebuilding, or let's say it happens like way later in our lives or past our lives. We have moved through the world with the transmission of being with the intensity of all and still emanating unconditional love to the best that we can, because we're humans. And of course, that's a whole different thing. Conditional love is also part of the experience. But I don't know where I ended up. We're here now. Yeah.
No, I love that. I love that we just dive right in, because I think it's really easy to stay on the surface level. That's, I think, what we see in Instagram land and in this mainstream coaching industry now is, especially when it comes to embodiment, especially when it comes to erotic embodiment, that sells as well. And it's also, there's so much beauty there. It's not to judge it, but it's to really connect to what you said from the beginning is, and why are we doing this? What is the medicine here? And the beauty of that medicine is that it doesn't just start with us. We have this whole lineage of, if you have the Rose lineage, we have the Isis lineage that's connected to that. We've been doing this for a while, this work of embodiment. And I think what's so powerful and important about doing this work is when we look at what actually was used to suppress and disempower and oppress for many thousands of years, was taking exactly this away from the feminine, which is the erotic power, the pleasure, this aspect of the sacred sexuality that was taken away. And we all know that's why Mary Magdalene was cast as a prostitute and all of that. It was exactly this desecration of the sacred around this topic. And so there's no way we can talk about power.
there's no way we can talk about leadership without having this conversation and without doing this work. And so I think for me, that just comes more and more. I think we're also in this beautiful Venus in Aries cycle that we've entered into for the next many months. And there's just like this sacred warrior fire, this sacred warrior. Oh, how are we working with this fire, with this anger, with this rage and transmuting it? And there's so much goodness here. Yeah. Yeah. I think that there's so many different versions, of course, of what the story really was with Mary Magdalene. And I really encourage everyone to, through their body, connect to what resonates for them. And so for me, I've read different books, I've listened to different podcasts and YouTube videos, and I did my own self-education because I haven't particularly gone through a mystery school myself. I feel like my life is one big mystery school. So I feel that's more than enough. So I just would listen to my body and I would go, okay, this feels really true, or this just has medicine for me, whether it was factually true or not. Because I think so much of this is about just working with an archetypal energy. And I think with Mary Magdalene, there's this piece that I find really interesting around the risk she took to be misunderstood. There's this way in which the purpose, the path of the heart was all that really mattered. And even if that meant no one really got it or didn't get it for a while or didn't get it for thousands of years, or then she got pushed out and now is just getting a glow up, I don't know what, but like it's coming back in because we so need that energy, right? And no matter what was in the face of her mission, it didn't stop her. And there's something that I really draw a lot of inspiration from. That, okay, yeah, I'll be misjudged, mislabeled, misunderstood, but I know what's true in my heart. And I think it's so important, especially in the day and age of social media and where our minds and kind of brains and nervous systems have gotten to the place of it. Even those of us who are like, oh, yeah, I don't care what people think, and I don't care about likes, and I don't care about this and that. It's like, there is, just by virtue of the fact that we're consuming social media, it's going to affect our brain and nervous system in such a way that we forget on a subconscious level that we sometimes are performing, that we sometimes are not actually fully showing up uncensored and raw because of the fear of being misunderstood, canceled, judged, whatever it might be. And my sense is she just didn't give a fuck. She was like, yeah, we're here. And not in a I don't give a fuck way, but it's more just like she knew what was true. She had connected so deeply to her heart that she knew it was true and she was willing to do whatever it took. And I think that's medicine that we can really use to fuel our own mission and to help nourish our hearts in times when we're looking around and going, what's the point? Do I even have a purpose? And how do I help all the people in pain in the world? And oh my God, it just keeps getting more and more chaotic. And it's so easy for our nervous systems to shut down in the face of that because we were not meant to be consuming news from all around the world, right? Like we're supposed to only know what's happening in our village and handle like one grief event at a time. Okay, the one elder is dying, or I don't know, something happening in the village, right? But not, oh my God, everyone's problems everywhere in every country. And you can just access it by opening your phone as you're having your morning coffee. And then you wonder, oh my God, why am I so frazzled? Or why am I numbing out? Or why am I doing this? It's like, we're not used to that. But we're working with the technology we have and the times that we have. And so what we have to do is we have to double down on our ability to be with that information and the intense emotions that come from consuming that information. Obviously, we can also consume less of it if we are consuming it and we want to be staying up to date with what's going on. How do we work with what comes up as a result of that? And how does it not pull us off center or off the path that we're trying to pave? So I love that. And on top of that, then we have the added question now, which I'm seeing more and more of, like just being in the scroll and being like, wait a second, that's not a human. Like that's artificial. And so we also have that coming in. And so it really struck me as you were talking as well is the truth. A lot of what we talk about here in the Miracle Zone podcast is frequency. And there's just that frequency of the truth and of us being able to feel that in those people that we are relating to in social media when we're listening to something, when there is so much misinformation, is how do I come back to me and actually feel what is true in a world where that is no longer a given ever, and it will be less and less over time. And I think it's also really important when we think about our work that we do and our business as well, because our ability to be in this frequency of being an embodiment of the truth of love, because they're one and the same, is also how we can connect to our clients and how people are drawn to us as well when they're also swimming around in a world of illusion and misinformation too.
Yeah.
So I'm a little curious to hear a bit from you about, so I know that you also work with a lot of leaders and women who also run businesses and support them with the embodiment work. So I'm curious to hear a little bit about what that looks like in terms of why this is so important specifically for us in our leadership, in our day-to-day running of our business. Like, why does it even matter so much? Because I think it's easy to be like, if I want a sacred partnership or like love, obviously it matters. But from a leadership perspective and a business perspective, why does this work matter?
Yeah.
It's so important because my whole thing is really about teaching wholeness. And I know there was like such a trendy moment of it's all about the feminine. And even though in certain areas of my life, I'm like super primarily operating in my feminine, there's other areas of my life I'm very much operating in my masculine. And ideally, there's a place where I'm pulling in on all of these different energies. And those are actually four because I split them up into quadrants. There's a static and dynamic expression of the feminine and the static and dynamic expression of the masculine. And just like to give, if someone hasn't heard about this before, I'll give like a one sentence of what each of those are, just so that we can anchor into the concept. So basically, when your static masculine is very much about the oak tree energy, right? It's about holding, it's about being the vessel, containment. Then you've got dynamic masculine is very much about arrow energy from point A to B. It expresses, it moves, it's penetration, so to speak, right? And then we've got with the static feminine is very much about receptivity. It's about just kind of, if you think about just like laying back in Shavasana and receiving, right? That's very much the static feminine. And then the dynamic feminine is expression. So it's the water that flows inside the container. It's the energy, the eros that moves and animates something, right? It's what's within. It's very much a moving, watery kind of expressive energy. And so if we just think about those four, all of us have these, but for some of us, we just don't work one muscle as much as the other. And so a lot of my work is, especially if you're training with me as a facilitator, is to get clear on, okay, where for you is the area that feels a little bit atrophied or weaker as a muscle. And let's work on that. Because, for example, when you were talking about, okay, how do you help clients who are also going through these chaotic times? It's they're coming in and they're probably going to be very much in their dynamic feminine, right? They're expressing, they're feeling, they're like, oh my God. Yeah. And so for you, you're not going to fully just be in static masculine, but bringing in the kind of holding space. When we talk about a space holder, it's literally the container, right? You're coming in, you're grounding their energy, you're holding their energy. You're also a witness. All of this is that containment, but you also want to be empathizing and listening, right? So there is like a feminine component to it. It's not like you're just there, like, I am just the observer, witnessing and listening. So it's really important. And then of course there's all these different ways. It's a dance of like, when do you tap into which energy, how much of each one there is, and you're never conscious. Like I'm never sitting in a coaching session with my client going, okay, let me up the notch on the masculine here and let me bring it down there. But you just,
I just pictured you like a DJ on a dashboard.
well, exactly. Yeah. It's because that's actually what's happening in the board behind the scenes. But when you've practiced it enough and you understand it, you'll know what to bring into the moment, and it will just start to happen naturally. The same way that when you first start learning dance moves, it's awkward. And then over time, it just becomes natural and you can bring your own unique version of it in, which is also part of it. It's like, you're not meant to be exactly 25%. Like you also are, every single facilitator has their own unique magic, which is so much of what I'm also really passionate about. Is I cannot stand all these trainings where people come out like little clones of whoever's running the training. And I get that's step one, and I'm okay if it's step one. But the problem is I see a lot of those people just stick to teaching the same teachings. They can be really amazing teachings. There's work I've done with a certain lineage where I'm like, this has changed a huge chunk of my life and my intimacy and my relating. But then I kind of see everyone who trains under that lineage just doing the same thing over and over again. And I'm like, but I want your flavor of it. And so what I really enjoy doing and what I try to focus on with my trainings is giving you universal principles like these, like the static dynamic. And then you get to create your own unique version of that, including like your body of work and how you want to show up and how you facilitate your style, your kind of events. I'm like, why we're all you. This is such a huge value of mine that we're here. Embodied expression is about the freedom to be yourself, not to just be like cookie cuttering someone else's modality. And so I think that's also a huge part of it, is being the embodiment of your authenticity is a huge part of being a good embodiment facilitator, is you're modeling permission and truth to the people that you are sharing space with. And that in itself is, I think, going to change someone else's life, because then you become a walking permission slip for them to be themselves. And we all know, since we're talking about frequency, that authenticity, they've been saying that there's been studies, who knows where those studies came from, and that I don't quote me on it, but like I've heard that there are studies about that now the authenticity is a higher frequency than love. I don't know, because like you said, love and truth and authenticity to me are all the same bucket, but it's up there, right? They're all in the high vibe.
Like joy
in the
is
high
up
vibe
there
section.
too.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So we're in the high vibes. As long as you're in the high vibe section, you're good. And so it's like,
you can't be in love and you can't really be in joy if you're not also being in authenticity, because then there's just a misalignment there. So it's the same conversation in many ways.
I agree with you. I agree. I think that I'd be curious to get into the minutia of what those studies are, but needless to say, we're in the high frequency club, which is wonderful. And the more we're all in the high frequency club, then life is going to be so much better. The world is going to be better. We're going to make better decisions. We're all going to feel better. We're going to counteract the EMFs. We're going to do whatever we need to do to keep things up here and high vibe. And I do think that's really important times like this, when there's equal amounts of low frequencies that are really pulling us down. They're fighting for our consciousness and our psyche. So it's really important for us to stay up here, which includes creating and curating experiences for people to find themselves and to be okay with themselves, and to even not just be okay and accept themselves, but actually celebrate and brag and love up on themselves and just, be unapologetically, unabashedly themselves. It's my favorite thing to watch that.
Yeah. And the power goes hand in hand with the pleasure and with the play. Again, it's a beautiful little cocktail there. And I'd love to hear a little bit about, so there's there's the aspect that we've been talking about, and there's also the aspect of bringing the sacred and experiencing the sacred through the body itself. So I'm curious to hear a little bit around that, because I think for me, it's been a beautiful journey of learning that through experience and coming to terms with the sacred first up here when it first came into my space, and then getting more grounded and rooted and more and more. And yeah, but why is this the portal? Like this? Why is this the portal? Why? I don't know, but I can tell you how, because this is what we got. This is what we're working with here. And I think that it's such an interesting mechanism to take away the power of people by saying, hey, you have to connect with God through an operator, through a third party. When, of course, you can connect to God within. You can connect to God outside, which is within. How meta to get into this, right? Because we are God. And so it's like, why the body? Because this is what we can feel and sense. And when we feel and sense our existence, not to get too philosophical, right? But that's when we can feel and sense God, because our existence is God. So there's not really a division here at all. And I think that has been the number one thing that has really messed with people over the hundreds, thousands of years, is this idea that you have to go somewhere, or you have to have certain accessories, or you have to have a certain person that's hierarchically above you to access the divine, when really all you need is to connect to your breath, to feel your inhale, to feel your exhale, to slow down enough to not just be operating in the autopilot 3D, and to just be like, actually, when I slow down enough, and for everyone that's different, right? Some people it's stillness. Some people it's through movement. Some people it's through sex. Some people it's through nature, maybe all of the above. But when we slow down enough to connect with the truth that everything always has been and always will be, and that there isn't really a beginning, middle, and an end, or a timeline, and that there isn't really just now. Like when we just really get into this place where everything intersects, I don't know how else to explain it. Then Miracle zone.
In the miracle zone, that's it. That's when we're connecting to God, the miracle. And so to me, I think that what I came here on earth to do, to experience, and then to allow other people to experience, is specifically the path of deepening through your senses. So using taste, touch, smells, movement, sound, all of that to get you deeper into the present moment. And through certain channeled works, right? The story of Mary Magdalene too is one that she had walked the path of the Tantrika, that she was part of a mystery school that was very much about inner alchemy. And this is so much of the work that I've always done, but for the beginning didn't necessarily have a language for it. And it was more like, oh, this is embodied expression. It's, oh yeah, why are we expressing through why are we doing this? We're doing this because, one, we want to be with what is, but by being with what is, having the space to be with what is, when in a society, we don't actually, we're constantly being told, go to the next thing, right? There aren't spaces to just be and check in. Oh my God, how am I feeling? Like women always come to me and I'm like, oh, do you ever have space to just slow down and be like, to check in? What's going on over here? No, because we have a million things we have to do in capitalism, and as a mom, as a whatever business owner, and having that sacred space to slow down and be with what is, and then to use breath as the catalyst, and sound and movement, but breath is step one, to really start to alchemize and transform. Even through just your being, by breathing into a spot, you start to shift it. By breathing into emotion, you start to shift it. And you can also go in with the intention of shifting it. But even without the intention of shifting it, if you're there long enough, it's going to shift. It's going to alchemize. And so this was so much of the work that, again, according to these channeled works, which to me was what really resonated as truth, right? But that she was a practitioner of this, and that her and Yeshua really were doing a lot of that work together. So they were like literally embodiment polarity partners, like according to this particular channeled work. And I'm like, that checks out in my body. And whether it's the factual truth or not, right? Like what I said earlier, if we use just that as archetypal medicine, as like a North Star for us, we go, oh, heaven is actually inside of us. We just need to find it. This was one of, again, I'm literally wearing an Allah necklace. Like I grew up, I'm technically Muslim. I'm obviously not practicing, being that I'm also a sensuality, erotic, and pole dancing instructor. But in Lebanon, where I come from, when you're born into a religion, you are that religion like your whole life, unless you specifically convert to something else. And I wear this necklace, which just for me is connected to my heritage. And my mother wore it for so long, even though she was Christian. So that's the whole thing. But so the reason I say that is because, one, I just like to to remember that God is in my heart, and that I'm sharing this because I never grew up like with any kind of Christian teachings. I've never read the Bible. I don't know all the details. So everything that I know is learned from someone else, or I hear about this idea that Jesus said, like heaven, or one of the teachings is that I'm going to slaughter it completely because I don't know it, but essentially, about like, where are we finding heaven? And so much of what Mary Magdalene was trying to explain to the other apostles was like, yo, it's inside, guys. Like we're not going anywhere. And the same thing with the idea of Jesus rising is this idea of, can we find that unconditional Christ-like frequency inside of us? That's how I interpret it. Now, I don't know what's going on in the traditional religion, whatnot. And it's a blessing that I never had to. So one, I didn't have to deprogram it, but two, again, my style of spirituality has always been like, I just do it my way, and I take what I want and I leave what I don't. And I'm really bored of reading historical texts. Like, it's just not my thing. But then when I read something and I'm just like, something about the frequency of this channeled work feels really true. And then I just pay attention, because if nothing else, it has medicine for me. And if anything, for listeners, I would invite you to just use that same methodology. Where do you get magnetized? Go there. What kind of like dings you? Go there. What has you start to vibrate in your body? Go there and just pay attention, because probably there's something there for you. It might not be the same thing that's there for me, but it's something that's guiding you in the direction of some kind of truth or lesson or something that you need for yourself. And how do you feel it? You feel it through the body. But if you are numbed out and not paying attention, and you're not used to checking in and learning, okay, what is the language of my body? How does my body say, go there? How does my body say, stop? How does my body go, yay? If you haven't spent enough time with her, right? Like, how are you going to know? Mm-hmm. So that's so much of the practice too, is that it becomes such a beautiful compass and ally in your life to take you in the direction that is actually meant for you, but also it just becomes more pleasurable. Not initially, because I got to tell you guys, I'm not going to try to sell you like whatever, but it's hard. And I think the whole path of embodiment and the tantric path, the Magdalene path, like it's all the same thing to me. It's once you start to accept what is, a lot of what is sucks or hurts or is painful. And that's okay, because you get to a point, and this is what it comes down to, when you get to mastery of this, when you've really been doing the reps at the embodiment gym, you start to not be scared of those emotions, because you also understand the power of inner alchemy, and you understand that, okay, wow, I feel like I'm going to drown. I think I might die today from this level of physical pain or emotional pain or whatever. I don't even think I'm going to make it. But when you've gone through that initiation many times, and you've learned about the power of your breath and your body and movement and sound, and you come out on the other side and you're like, woof, wow, I just moved that. And sometimes that happens in an hour. Sometimes it takes a year, guys. I'm not going to sell you like quick fixes here. This is not what I do. I go deep and I go slow, but it's effective. It's effective because then when you come back to another chapter of that, because you're going to have those good moments and those bad seasons, and it's just going to keep going.
Spiraling. They're going to keep spiraling.
Right. And so what keeps you going? You know what? I got this. Whatever comes, I got this. It's the resilience that comes with knowing I have inner alchemy and I have capacity. That's it.
Yeah. And what's on the other side, what's available, that is the true liberation, what's on the other side. And so we're willing to go to those places, even when there's trauma, even when there's suffering, even when there's, you were saying earlier, it's about feeling where we're feeling called and dinged. It's also really important to notice when your body says no. There's the things that call our attention through, ooh, that's interesting, or I'm getting a little ping. But then there's the no's, there's the I don't want to look there's, and there's that shadow piece. And I think that's also what you're alluding to, is we don't want to sell people on this is all fun and fluffy and ecstatic all the time. It's no, it's because we're noticing in our bodies what's a yes, also what's a no that we want to explore and soften into and create spaciousness in when we're ready. And when we do find these safe spaces held by other facilitators and held by ourselves or held by a safe partner, whatever that is, when we're ready to do that work as well. So I think it is, it's just like this really discerning listening of our body. And it also is what allows us to be accessing and tapping into the micro moments where we feel the all, where we feel the love, where we are really that embodiment of love in motion and love in action. So I'm curious to hear from you, just before we wrap up, what does this look like in your day-to-day life? Like, how do you do your reps now that you've been doing it for decades upon, I want to say decades upon millennia?
Here's the thing. It's like you come and you go. It's the spiraling in the season. So there's seasons where I feel there's not much practice I need to do. I'm just operating very present in my body. Everything I'm doing, from folding the laundry to doing the mundane stuff, I'm like in my body. And then there's times where I can even be on the mat practicing, doing some kind of nonlinear feminine movement, which is just basically means I put on a playlist of some of my favorite songs. And I just start off by following. First of all, I just ground and breathe. And then I follow like a pleasurable stretch, followed by another stretch. And then I just listen to what my body needs to do. And often I just end up in a zone of moving from one shape, one stretch, one whatever to another for 30, 45 minutes. And sometimes even I'm doing that and I'm like, I don't like it. I don't feel it. I don't, which is way worse for me than feeling a lot of anger or feeling a lot of frustration, which is different, right? Because then I'm still feeling it and expressing it and it's moving out of me versus just being like, I don't know, I'm just here, but I'm not, but I am. And the worst is obviously when you start to go into, you realize 10 minutes in, you're like, oh, wow, I literally just was like going through the list of things I need to buy for the groceries. And I just thought about this horrible conversation I had the other day that the tab hasn't closed. When you just go into the mental
like,
space.
Come back.
I've been technically practicing embodiment as a practitioner for 18, 19 years. The fact that we even have to say I'm an embodiment practitioner is hilarious, but this is the times we're in. But that's something where I've been like actively had some kind of practice for this long. But like I'll go through all kinds of periods where sometimes I'm like, wow, that's interesting. And then periods where I drop in more. And I think part of understanding your body too is also trusting the intelligence and wisdom of your body, which is sometimes the numbing out is part of what she knows is best. It's not always the worst thing in the world. You don't always have to be like, oh my God, I'm so connected and tantric and like breathing and moaning and whatever. Ugh. No, sometimes that is not there's a place not to do it. One of my teachers, Michaela Bohm, would talk about that, where she was like, you don't go into a boardroom, like as much as we'd all like to, and just be like ecstatic and moaning the way you would on a mat doing feminine practice. You just like shift gears a little, and that's okay. That's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean you're not connected. And so I think the other piece that's really important, very empowering, is to understand when to turn up the dial and turn it down, but to have access to the dial, because most people come to me because they don't have access to the dial. They're like, oh, I want to feel more sensual and erotic. I just can't even find the station. I don't know how to get there frequency wise. Versus I think when you're empowered and you've been practicing it, what you can do is you can decide when to turn it up, when to turn it down. I don't want to turn it up at the grocery store and there's days where I'm like, I don't want to get hit on. Other days I go to the grocery store and I want to get hit on. So turn it up. But it's like having access to that is what makes you feel truly free, because you know you can do what you want when you want it, instead of going, oh, I would like to feel more sensual, but I just feel awkward, or I feel disconnected, or I feel numb. That's when we feel disempowered, and that can really feel painful for people. And that's why it's part of why people come to me. It's either because they're trying to help facilitate an experience for their clients who have that issue, or they're coming to me because they themselves have that issue.
I love that. I love that. I love that you talked about the dial. So one of the things that I'm facilitating soon is something called Pillar of Light. And I don't talk about as much of a dial, but I talk about the circuit board, because it's more about how to create capacity in this body for more light to pulse through it. But it's like, we got to think about the actual capacity of the circuit board. And this is just another beautiful visual. It's like the capacity of us as a vessel of light. But then there's also this dial of, okay, but how am I working with how I want that to show up, especially in my embodiment, in my sensuality, in my power. It could be erotic, but it could also be other types of powers. Like I get to choose. And that's like another level of, it's not just about expanding it to max capacity, but it's also being able to tone it and to tweak it and to make it work for us when we want. So I love that. So I wanted to ask you, before we complete, you mentioned your embodiment training. I know you have a beautiful body of work and legacy that you've been weaving. Can you just share a little bit about that in case anybody who's interested in reaching out to you?
Yeah, more than happy to. Yeah, so Embody Remix is the name of my facilitator training. It's something I've run for 8 rounds now, but this round is remixed because I've completely shifted. I've really expanded and upgraded the curriculum to focus a lot more on erotic and tantric practices, as well as creating your own body of work. So the original facilitator training is a little bit more focused on just learning how to drop people into their bodies. What is the art and science, the nervous system piece of it, the music and fun piece of it, the archetypal expression piece of it. And that was really beautiful and is still the kind of core of it. But essentially, we're adding in all these new expanded pieces now. So much so that a lot of my previously certified teachers have already signed up for the new program, which is really fun. So in a way, even though it's another round, it feels like it's a little bit more advanced, I would say, or a little bit more just deeper, because I'm a depth junkie. I just keep going deeper. I'm like, let's go. How much deeper can we go? And the idea is really that it focuses on supporting space holders, leaders, guides, coaches, therapists, anyone who kind of works in this world, to work specifically with taking their clients out of their mental space more deeply into their embodied experience, how to facilitate group workshops and events and movement sessions and different kinds of movement sessions. Are you working with a space that's femme only? Are you working with a space that's co-ed? Is it big? Is it small? Are you working one-on-one with a client, and how to adjust when you're working one-on-one with a client in terms of that level of intimacy? So we cover all of these things, as well as like the embodied sales, because I think that's a big one that not a lot of people talk about.
Such a big deal.
Yeah, really how to drop into, again, those different energies that we talked about earlier when you are selling. And the idea being that you become so masterful at what you facilitate that your marketing becomes breeze, because I'm not really great. I'm not like a content creator. Marketing is not really my thing. And the way that I've kept my practice going has been by delivering really good and fantastic experiences. Not good, I shouldn't say that. They're fantastic. They're transformative. And so I want the same for other people, because once you become that good, it takes the pressure off of having to run around and do all these other things like reels on Instagram and whatever that I can't do personally. I'm just like not good at. So
it's cultivating that presence. Yeah. That presence that just captivates.
Yeah, which is the old school way that we did it. We forget. We're like Instagram. I actually started my coaching practice before Instagram was a thing. And so how did coaches exist back then? Word of mouth. That was it. Most of my clients are repeat clients or referrals. It really is a business model that works, and Instagram's going to die soon. So anyways, we went on a tangent. The point is that I love to train a very small cohort of 10 people. You get direct feedback from me every single time on every piece of homework, on everything. So it's really very much like a mastermind. And we start in September. And we've got a few more spots left. So if anyone's listening and is interested, I'm sure in the show notes, we'll have a link to the page to get all the details and apply. Yeah, that's kind of the big thing going on in my world. And I have a rotating open door for one-on-one coaching as well for anyone who just wants to have a classic, unconventional life coach teaching them. That is something I love, love, love to do. And depending on whether I've availability or not, that can start and end at any time that people want.
Thank you so much, Nadia. I'm so happy to have been able to spend today with you. I know you've just recently been to southern France and you've been all up in the Magdalene coast.
Literally all
energy,
up in.
Like literally in the vagine.
Yep.
The vagine cave. And so I'm so happy to connect with you this week and check out her training, everyone. If you do decide to sign up, let her know you found out about her through the podcast and let me know so I can celebrate you, and also just know, because there's always people asking for referrals for this type of work. It's so important. And I will see everybody on the next episode. Thank you, Nadia, my love.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in to the Miracle Zone. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a transmission. And if today's episode and conversation resonated, leave a review and share it with a fellow visionary leader. In the links, you can access my free Miracle Business Blueprint, the 7-part framework I use with my clients to create a thriving, scalable, and self-sustaining business that gives you more freedom, not less. Plus, you'll receive a guided process to identify where to focus first so you can spend more time leading in your miracle zone right away. Let's build the new as a collective for the collective. Together, we're not just creating miracles, we're living them. Until next time, stay in the miracle zone.